Hello and welcome back to part 3 of my video series where I look at how to enjoy the multimedia on your NAS from the comfort of your sofa using an Amazon Fire TV or Fire Stick. And today we are comparing the two big ones. We are looking at DS Video and QNAP's QMedia application. These are both first-party applications for Amazon Fire TV, and both of which allow you to access video media on your NAS on the network. That's locally or remotely over the internet, but more on those details later on. For now, let's flick over to the laptop screen very quickly because we got a whole bunch of disclaimers to get through. Number one, in the case of the QNAP, the applications we are using for this video are QuMagie for the photo application. More on a lot of this sort of stuff later on. Music application is Music Station. Video Station is Video Station. You can see where we're going, but we're not going to be looking at Photo Station. Why is that? Because Photo Station is no longer supported on QMedia. Get used to hearing that as well, because in the case of the Synology, we are going to be utilising this Synology here with Video Station installed. Both of these are Celeron powered NASes, the TS264 and the DS920 Plus. Don't worry too much about the hardware, it's going to play little to no part in this video. We're also using Video Station with the TV database API built in. So for those that aren't aware, when you are setting both of these devices up for the first time, they both give you the option of crawling the internet for metadata based on your media. In the case of the QNAP, you go into the App Center, and on the left hand side, Multimedia add-ons. You got the option to add these to allow the system to scrape that metadata. You just download the plugin, install it, and it runs. In the case of the Synology, you have to do a little bit more. You got to go to the video info plugin there, and you have to sign up for the movie database API. It doesn't cost you any extra, but you do have to go out and get hold of the API via a long, convoluted URL, but you can get it. Now, the reason I bring all this thing up to do with photos and music is one of the earliest things we've really got to touch on is that Video Station, as the name suggests, only covers video. So if we flick back right now over to the Fire Stick, you can see there with the Fire Stick there online, QMedia and DS Video. But you can also see this cheeky little app, DS Photo. Now maybe things have changed when you're watching this in the future. Maybe I've somehow missed some incredibly obscure setting, but a lot of research I've done online seems to prove my theory. DS Photo does not support, at least on Amazon Fire TV, access to Synology Photos. It only works with the legacy DSM 6.2 Photo Station application. Now, if you're using Apple TV, if you're using Android TV, both of them have a Synology Photos application that allows you to access your Synology Photos database, which is great, right? Well, it is good, but Fire TV is still one of the most popular plug-in HDMI box type enjoy your multimedia from the comfort of your sofa devices worldwide, or at least from what I understand and the stats that I've looked at. So Video Station only allows you to access the video, not the music. Because if you want to access your music, you're going to need to either use a third-party application such as VLC or MX Player or some of the other UPnP streaming applications, or if you're using an Amazon Alexa, I'm pleased to say that you can use Synology's DS Audio application to use the downloadable Amazon skill to voice command your music from your NAS. More on that later on in another video. But for now, it has to be said that if you're looking for a single portal to enjoy your multimedia, QMedia has probably got your edge. Because if we go in to DS Video there, we load up that application. We are accessing this NAS on the local area network, by the way. We're not accessing it remotely, although we could have by assigning our Quick Connect account. From here, we can access all of the different crawled albums for movies, for TV shows, for home video, some of those test files that I use, all of which directly from this interface on the comfort of your sofa. And if we look at movies, I know I keep looking at the Matrix movie, but because of the YouTube crawling and copyright issues, it's very difficult sometimes to show certain multimedia files, and there's even no guarantees with this one. But if we look at the graphical user interface of this device, we can see that, we can flick through. We've got the video settings options there. We've got some of that scrawled metadata there all the way through. If we scroll down further, there's the initials of the actors all of which, if you've got other multimedia on your system that has the same actor, such as if I go in and go into Pulp Fiction, for example, and we look up Tarantino, we already know that there is the Hateful Eight on there and Reservoir Dogs, so we're still able to use some of that lovely metadata to go through our albums in different ways. It is certainly presented in a really lovely fashion. It's just a shame that we can't access our videos and music, our photos and music from this same GUI. Again, not the end of the world, you've got those other apps, but still nonetheless, you can only access that video media there. It's very slick, it's very responsive, and with the crawling of that metadata, I would argue that it can rival a lot of streaming services utilising your own media. Now, if we come out there and make our way into QMedia, we can see how QNAP have approached this. So, with QMedia, we've got access to the full range of videos, of photos, and of music. I will say, this, although they're very, very similar, indeed it's the same font, arguably the exact same layout there, so there's certainly some borrowing of the same primary assets of the two platforms by the looks of things in the GUI, but arguably the way multimedia is displayed on the QNAP is a little bit more sedentary. I'm recording this on a 15.6 inch laptop screen. You might be watching this on a 50 to 60 inch telly. I'm not sure if that text is going to be as clear or as nice to read as it was on the Synology one there. And again, we can't go into the actors at all there. We can't really go any further than this. If we go in, for example, into Pulp Fiction, just like we did before, scroll on down, we can see other videos, but they're certainly not linked by Quentin Tarantino there. It's clearly just gone to other videos. Now, this is made up for, I'm sure, for a number of users with two very distinct advantages. Obviously, the one that we talked about already, the fact that we can access art photography. To put that into perspective, if we go down and find a photo there, again, we're going to find a photo of my cat because, let's face it, I've got a problem. If we go for a photo of my cat here, open it up on screen, we can scroll along, flick between all the different ones. We can go in, we can go into a slideshow if we choose to. Again, we can apply music if we choose. There's different options. We've got stuff that we can do there, but also on top of that, if we wish, we can go ahead, find out some more information about the photos, even scrape into some, not all, but some of the metadata there. So, for example, if we come out there, go back in, look at the metadata there. Some of it we can access, which is good. We see the device that was taken on, some of the exposure and ISO there. Useful stuff. Maybe not the most useful from the comfort of your sofa, but still pretty darn good. Same goes with music. You've got the option there to crawl through, access all of your different albums there, playback directly from this menu, find out a little bit more information that you've managed to scrape based on that. All of it readily available to you and accessible via the comfort of your sofa, which I think a lot of users are going to enjoy. But I will say that between these other options, the other option that really will appeal to users is that folder option. That's right, from the comfort of your sofa, you can head in, you can go to File, Folder, Breadcrumbs. You can say, right, I want to go right the way in here and I want to access the file and playback this way. I don't want to have to only go for the crawled methodology. So ultimately, when you're comparing QMedia here with its slightly more breadcrumb methodology there, but the lack of the same kind of high-level presentation as we've seen of that scraped metadata when we compare it against the DS video, QuMagie, so not QMagie, QMedia gives you a little bit more area of control, scroll, and access that is limited in the DS Video app. But of course, the DS Video application is doing that to keep it simple, keep it smooth, keep it user-friendly there, something that Synology are incredibly well known for there. Ultimately, between these two apps, at least at this stage, it's going to come down to whether you only want to access video for a number of you, or you're looking for a single portal outlet to get to all of your media, something I'm kind of surprised Synology, in all of their simplicity, have not released. And again, I know if you are using Android TV, if you're using Apple TV, you have other options open to you, but still that single portal access point from QNAP there is very, very useful. It just requires a little bit more of an update in the presentation. Now, talking of presentation, let's get down to what's most important for a number of you, playback. Because if we look at, for example, playing back a multimedia file, so let's crack on back into the matrix there. So if we go into the classification there, we make our way into the matrix for playback, select it there, we click play on that option, carry on where we left off. These are our control options. Obviously, we can fast forward, we can rewind, we can go in, we can change the audio format files, subtitles, stuff like that. All of that with a decent degree of control. We can bookmark areas of the multimedia or the file itself, as well as find out a little bit more real-time information about the file. But it's all presented arguably in a very stodgy form. There's not really any control here. This is just listing prerequisite information. We can't edit. Certainly we can't do any kind of transcoding here. Nothing we can do within the utilized video format page here, but we do at least have control of the file. Now if we come out of this and head back into that menu, we can have a little look at how Synology approach playback. Let's go back in, go into DS Video, and we'll play back the exact same file. So if we play it here, carry on where we left off, and from here we can go in. We've got the option of changing that audio format then, again, subtitles as available. On top of that, we can go into the cog there. There's a little bit more information on the, it's frankly an incredible amount of configuration with regards to subtitles. Fair play to them on that one. But again, no option anywhere on this screen, I've just paused it, to, you know, encode, decode, convert the file. Now, a number of you are going to question whether that's necessary. You're right. I'm accessing this from the comfort of perhaps my sofa on the local area network. Why would I give a crap about conversions and transcoding if I'm accessing local? You're right. I don't need to. But what if I'm not? What if I'm accessing this NAS, this time not on the local area network? What if I was accessing it remotely using my Quick Connect account? What if I was utilizing it and accessing this NAS, you know, on the other side of the world, and I was using a metered data connection? I was using a device that doesn't support 8GVC, a device that can't support 4K, and I need to transcode that file down. If you've got family members on the other side of the world, chances are you're gonna need conversions and transcoding. So how are they handled by both of these apps? Well, here on DS Video, you can see you can enable, disable. Obviously, if you're going to be using hardware transcoding, you want to make sure you've got a NAS that has got the oomph, be it integrated graphics or a graphics card to get the job done. But you can change the default quality levels there, so you can set it manually to be a fixed to high, medium, low. But I remember on the desktop application, you are able to configure this. Just to put that into a little bit of perspective, if we head back just very briefly to the NASes side by side, and this time we play back the matrix here, as I make sure that everything is muted. If I play it here, I've got an option down here with a cog that allows me to change the playback quality in the window, something I can't do from the comfort of that sofa. Again, if I was accessing it locally only on the sofa, this wouldn't be a big deal. But it's the idea that when I am utilizing this application on my TV, I can still access it remotely. So having that level of control whilst playing would have been very useful. Again, the same goes if you want to utilize a third-party player. So if you want to take advantage of things like VLC, MX Player and more, you can bind to those as needed. And of course, both of these apps support AC3 and DTS pass-through for conversions there of theatre audio. So there are configuration options open to you there. They're not exactly awe-inspiring, and I would argue there are more built into the desktop app. And I don't think anyone could really use the excuse that you don't have the necessary user input. I think remotes these days have become far more sophisticated for that. But again, there's some options, but not absolutely loads. Now, if we flick back to QMedia and go in there, within QMedia, if we go to the configuration options and we go into settings, we can see how things compare. So the login settings, again, much the same. You can log in remotely or locally if you choose. Next up, within the video settings options there, we can change that default resolution if we choose to. But there isn't really much in the way of configuring it and changing it. Now, you can, if you choose, heading back into the NAS GUI very quickly, you can choose, if you wish, to kind of manage the transcoding options of your NAS, but you still will need to do a lot of that configuration from within the individual applications, and it's not that straightforward. The fact there isn't an NVIDIA option open to me, built in from the comfort of my sofa, is going to be slightly off-putting for some users. And you can transcode offline, but you still will need some of the licensing there. And even then, it's not ideal, I think, for most users that don't really want to have to muck around with a lot of those options there. Now, moving forward, again, we can change the default player if we wish, just like we can on the Synology. If we move forward, we can make our way back there into photo settings, because of course it's going to have different settings, but they're not hugely awe-inspiring. Weirdly, when you go into music settings, there is the option for transcoding on the fly of those audio files. Some might argue, except if you're using RAW or listening to some high-end FLAC files, that transcoding is going to be far more useful on video than it is to audio. Why isn't it available on the video? Bloody good question. But again, those are kind of our configuration options built into the main GUI, and there isn't a huge amount to choose from. Now, I said this video was about Synology and QNAP, and I have already made comparisons to PLEX already, and I didn't really want to bring PLEX up, but I do think at this juncture, just because I'm talking about the level of control and configuration some people might want at their fingertips, if anyone was to argue that it's too complex to give you that via an Amazon Fire TV app, I would say look at PLEX here. PLEX, for example, I can choose a lot of configuration options, and again, if you've watched the first two parts in this video series, you know what I'm going to talk about, but you have an enormous amount of control and configuration options for local playback, for remote playback. You can then dig a lot more, where you go in and have quality suggestions, where you can have the system choose whether you should downgrade or upgrade the picture quality as per your network bandwidth. There's a lot more control here, and it is presented arguably in a very user-friendly fashion with these big icon buttons here. So it's certainly not impossible for the Synology and QNAP applications to provide that level of control. Ultimately, looking at these two, DS Video clearly, even if it is a relatively small margin, gave you more config options for transcoding. For encoding, it gave more options, because the QNAP seemingly had none, which is super annoying. Of course, you know, in our summary here, as we round things up, it has to be said that QMedia still manages to be a single portal interface to access your photos, your music, and your video. It has that breadcrumb file folder access if you need it. It's very large in its icon presentation, although a little lackluster when we're looking at individual files, and the way that metadata may have been scraped is just, it's a little drab, it's a little early 2000s, but it's still there. Overall, I think the QMedia application gives you, as always with a lot of QNAP apps, a huge amount of control in most ways, and navigation and setting things up the way you want to. It's just a damn shame that it doesn't have the same level of configuration and transcoding options presented to us in DS Video, which, although lacking all the other config options, makes up for it in my mind up to a certain degree, with the inclusion of those video settings there and the idea you can control the output. Once again, for local accessing users and those that are only using the LAN and the TV in the front room and one in the bedroom, you're not going to worry. But if you've got children off at college, if you've got grandparents hundreds of miles away accessing your media, this is going to matter. Overall, between the two of them, there's a user case for both. We can't really compare them and say one is better, because they're obviously built on different platforms. But between the two of them, I would say the DS Video app is certainly the more user-friendly of the two. But I would say the QMedia application is the more functional of the two, with support of different multimedia types, versus, as always, a Synology app where a lot of work has gone into the UX. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this. Again, it's going to be a slight break while I get ready for the other parts in this series, where we're going to be looking at Jellyfin, looking at MB, and ultimately helping you make the most of your NAS and your Amazon Fire TV. Hopefully we'll be looking at Apple TV and Google TV as well, because I do think we've still got that question mark around photos on Synology. But apart from that, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Let me know if you have in the comments, and apart from that, have yourselves a fantastic week.